Excellent. Thanks, Geraldine, for confirming that. Our great superstar support officer over in McCarthy. So we'll start now. I've just started record. So Rod, can you just speak so Geraldine can hear you? She's asked.
Hi, Geraldine. How are you?
Yeah, she can hear you loud and fantastic. Okay, everyone. Welcome to today's Partner Solution Series. Today we're focusing back on Eventum Optimum. I've got some great topics coming up over the coming fortnights with a very varied amount of guest speakers and guest providers and stuff. So look forward to those. I'll mention a couple of those a bit later throughout. I'm joined here today from Rod Peters, Director of Eventum Optimum, company that I also sit on the board of. And one that we're providing a lot of solutions into the LightYear Docs membership base. Welcome, Rod. Thanks for joining me today.
Michael, hey guys, how is everyone?
Yep, if everyone's so I'll just before we jump in, I'll just want to apologise. I was in for surgery Friday morning early, and I've only just got back into the office today. I was working as much as I could. I had quite significant surgery. I've got a large amount of pain. I'm on heavy painkillers at the moment. So if I lose my train of thought or say something I probably shouldn't have said, that's the reason why. But I'll try and keep it on board today. But just bear with me. Rod's here to work through things. Rod's will deal with most of the EO stuff, and I'll jump in and add some comments along the way. So this is a good one. This session's more about, I guess, the practical aspects of what EO does, and we sort of go through, in particular, the mortgage registration process, which I know is a big one we're doing in relation to LightYear Docs products, such as the Protector and a few others. So, but we'll run through that, and then we'll talk about a few of the other EO services, once again, from more of a practical position on what we require, what we do, and what it actually does, which should be a fun one. So we'll jump into it now. So obviously, Partner Solution Series each fortnight. I've been delivering things from January, really growing in stature. We're getting a lot of comments from industry people, accountants and advisors, and I really enjoy doing these and bringing solutions to our LightYear Docs members database, and solutions that help and co-align with the strategies that Grant puts so much work into, and that are so fantastic in those great documents at LightYear Docs and the support that they provide. So these are some of the ones we've brought to date: Change GPS, EO. I love accounting. Obviously, Abbott-Family, great provider into the LightYear Docs product. We have Tony Anamaroulis and Grant Abbott. So Partner Solutions, LightYear Docs and EO. That's common that we know we're talking about that today. But to start off, what I wanted to do, and for those who may or may not know, it was a great week this week for LightYear Docs, and even in the week before for ILA. So LightYear Docs, if you don't know, were nominated for the Australian Digital Technology Awards, and we all sat and watched it during the week, and we were pleasantly surprised to find out that we won Startup of the Year in the Wealth and SMSF space. Absolutely fantastic result. I know that Ash and Grant have put so much into LightYear Docs, LightYear Group. It's a real baby of theirs, and they, where we've come from, I've been along as part of that journey, and where we're at today. It's certainly exciting times we were going to go to. So we won that. We came sixth also in the overall Wealth and SMSF space, which is absolutely amazing for first year in that category. Really big pat on our back, and we owe it to not only from us, but also all of our providers and all of our supporters and members within the base. But equally, I love accounting, which has obviously been rolling out a large number, I shouldn't say a large, a medium number of ESOPs and outsource and offshore solutions into LightYear member database. I found out that we were nominated, well, I found out about 8 weeks ago, we were externally nominated for the Australian Accounting Awards for 2021. Subsequent to that, last week, we found out we were finalists in the Startup Firm of the Year. And it's down to 3 finalists from a large pool. So very, very excited about that. That one, whilst the digital awards were done as a live stream, that one was actually going to be done at the Star in Sydney. So the Star Casino and the event section on the 18th of June. So I really look forward to that. I had to nominate 3 songs that we would go out and stage if we win. So I can't wait to hear what they are, because hopefully win that. So
any June.
Annie June, yeah. But Rod's daughter's just come out with her first song on the country music charts with James Blundell, so maybe that's a choice. So today's webinar, as I mentioned, it'll be looking a bit more at that practical process. We'll talk about a case study again, because we love doing case studies. Grant loves doing case studies. Rod loves doing case studies. It sort of puts that real life aspect on it. We've been doing a fair bit of work lately, haven't we, Rod, with a number of LightYear members in relation, especially in that business turnaround insolvency space. It's going quite well. And then we've got some great results so far, and we'll continue to do so. So we'll do an update on the environment, which I keep doing each time, but it just keeps changing and changing at the moment. So if anyone's got any questions or comments in relation to this as we go through, jump in. So just an update from EO. So I've got there, which everyone knows what I call the vid. So effectively, from January to 31 March, we've been struck by the vid. It's still sitting around and lingering around, obviously a lot worse in some countries such as India and some other areas. We've been fortunate in Australia to be so isolated and be a great island. But during that time, obviously our the federal government brought into a number of things such as the COVID safe harbour, JobKeeper, cash flow bonus, and financial pauses. And prior to COVID, EO was generating a large amount of referrals from a great accounting base we had, weren't they, Rod? And certainly doing some great results, but also some great revenue numbers. COVID came, and that's you can see by that red arrow, sort of went on pause because no one was everyone was able to trade insolvently. They didn't have to pay their debts. They were getting all these great handouts from the government. How fantastic was it? And all of a sudden 31 March come, and what happened, Rod?
All right, the phone started ringing again, Michael.
We thought, what's that sound? And then phones started ringing, counting referrals from the network that we had. Obviously, we've been building up the LightYear one as well, so we've been getting referrals in from that. But back to business as usual. Yeah, I think in that first week we took 10 leads, and we're sort of averaging that at the moment. And we're most of those are turning into jobs.
It's been quite incredible, Michael. It's sort of it's like a built-up sort of momentum. So it's Mick keeps dropping out.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Your end.
Yeah.
But
what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, I guess, Michael. The first one, we had a lot of zombie companies, we call them, companies that were ready for liquidation through cash flow and other issues, insurmountable debts, which were able to put themselves on hold, withdraw the government benefits of JobKeeper. Look, they probably should have been liquidated or closed earlier, but they held on to receive the government benefits. So a number of those clients now coming back on board and taking that insolvency event, unfortunately, which they need to do. There has been 2 or 3 of those companies which have been able to turn around now. They've been able to use the benefits of the government stimulus, which is what it's meant for, to be able to keep employees on and actually continue the business. So there's been some great success stories as a result of the government as well. But the real big thing we've noticed now, Michael, is that look, the statements of claims and the creditors' actions, which were put on hold for such a long period of time, the courts must be just absolutely jam-packed right now. I've had probably, in the last 2 weeks, I've probably about 30 statements of claims from clients put on my desk. It's just unbelievable how many creditors are now, they've had enough of waiting to get paid. The process is on foot, and essentially it's hard to keep up with, to be honest with you, Michael. It's just, everyone's chasing their money, which they couldn't chase before.
The ATO's going crazy, I know. Look,
that's not even, and these aren't even the ATO matters, Michael. These are predominantly trade creditors. So it's quite incredible just how many. There's obviously a bit of cash flow stress out there, and everyone chases their money. So we're sort of dealing with a lot of negotiation with creditors, trying to get good results both for the creditor and the debtor here. We usually always aim for a win-win, as you know. People seem to be reasonably accepting of that. There's a couple of people who just got the ump. A couple of clients of ours have been told, look, you pay up, or you're going to take you through the cleaners.
We had one last night, didn't we?
That's probably the good point. I mean, we always say this message about lodging tax returns, lodging your BAS, pardon me. But the same thing with communication to creditors. The worst thing a creditor can do, one of your clients, is put their head in the sand and not talk to creditors. I get in the phone and I talk to them, and there's usually a solution or some kind of a common ground we can get solutions. But clients who just don't answer calls from creditors and just ignore them, what happens? They get the creditor gets a ump, and it gets to the point where there's no amount of money can solve the problem. They feel like they've been neglected, and unfortunately, it's almost sort of bitterness which makes a decision rather than financial. So get on the front foot, talk to your creditors. It's never as bad as it first seems. It's like like the old Band-Aid, just pull it straight off, and it's never as bad. So look, any of your clients that are getting harassed by creditors, just give us a call. We're happy to roll our sleeves up and act on their behalf. It often can be daunting. I understand that. But that's what we do all the time. But it's never as bad as when you actually start talking.
And so it's interesting you said that, Rod. And like I've got on that slide talking about leads and getting 10 and stuff and helping them and closing it. It's not that the people don't want to necessarily proceed. It's exactly what you're saying there. That it is a daunting, distressing time for them, and they go back in recluse effectively and start burying their head in the sand. We've got one at the moment that has signed engagement documents, and then we're sort of gone AWOL all of a sudden because they just it was a hard step for them to move to that point, and then they sort of disappear again, and because they're like, oh, I can't handle it, and it is quite emotional. But I know I've sat on a number of your calls. We're almost psychologists in really as part of that whole thing, and talking them through the process and what they've got to do. And often people find it quite hard and extremely stressful. So, but it's about being proactive and making the right steps, which we sort of talk about in the case study a bit further on. So what we're going to talk about now is the mortgages and the mortgage process that we've got at Eventum Optimum for LightYear Docs members. We've been doing a number of them. We've got solicitors who sign off and everything as part of the process, and it goes through the Ppsr desktop. But it took us a little bit of time, obviously, when we first set it up. We've certainly got it all lined out now, and we're only making improvements in relation to that process. And once LightYear Docs 2.0 comes live, it'll even be better because it'll be sort of a push-through process through to us. But at the moment, it comes via email and discussions and everything. But we've got a flow chart that's I thought it was going to be ready a couple of weeks ago. It's almost ready, so it'll be effectively tick and flick to make sure what you've got. But what I wanted to do today was more of a practical session on this part in relation to the sort of documents that we require and why we require them and everything. So if a lot of the ones we're doing are in relation to the protector, so that gift and loan back strategy. And a large amount of the times when there's equity available, it's often a second mortgage we're putting in place. We have done a few first, but there's often a second. So a second mortgage is just another home loan taken out against an already mortgaged property. So it's usually a bit smaller than that first mortgage. So they can first and second mortgages, which Rod will agree can be used as a form of asset protection, such as the protector. You just got to keep in mind solvency issues and clawback periods. The protector is a great estate planning tool. It certainly can be utilised in relation to further asset protection, as long as you get past those solvency and those potential clawback periods because of related parties and related entities.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's a big defence mechanism. It really does deter. I think I might have mentioned in a previous webinar, Michael, that I would say 8 to 9 out of 10 clients that are unfortunately forced into personal bankruptcy, if they've got a home, we're able to protect and maintain that home even throughout bankruptcy, which is quite a stand. There are ways there. At the end of the day, creditors want their money. They don't want you. They don't want to force you to sell properties, and there's usually ways to do this. The key is second mortgages. We need to substantiate them appropriately, and we need to do deeds of equity to make sure that the equitable interest is counted. You can't just put a second mortgage without the backing. That's where the protector product is so vital, and also where there's money moved and money lent. We use a Ppsr in line with the second mortgage to make sure that it's no good putting on there if it doesn't hold up, under litigation. So we've got to make sure it's done correctly. It's a very good tool, Michael.
Yeah, so effectively the process is that obviously as accountants and advisors, you meet with your clients, you put a strategy in place. That may be the protector, obviously everyone's using LightYear Docs documentation where necessary, and then so you complete that, client signs them, the accountant advisor then reaches out, contacts EO. We provide all the documents that I'll go through in a second that are required in relation to CAFs and VOIs, which I'll explain in a second, and all the national mortgage form. Client signs all of that, and we'll have a lot of these. I've arranged with Ppsr to be able to get these in soft copy now, so they'll be rolled out in LightYear Docs 2.0. So when you do a strategy such as the Protector, and then we'll have them stand alone as well, you'll actually be able to, as part of the interview process, it'll fill out the national mortgage form and all the other required forms we need. The VOI is done electronically, but we'll have that CAF and everything. So client just signs it once, gets it through, send out the VOI, then we're ready to lodge with Ppsr. So mortgage registration, EO complete. So what do we need? So this is the what, the how, and I guess the dollars and everything. So to register a mortgage, we need the reason for the mortgage, which is when I say the reason for the mortgage, it's effectively the terms and conditions. So you have a national mortgage form which provides the details of the mortgagee and the mortgagor, but it's a one-page snapshot, or often second page for the signatories, but one or two page snapshot in relation to the details. So what the actual asset title that is under mortgage, and then the parties to that mortgage. But you also need to attach the terms and conditions. I'll get down as we go further on, but with that terms and conditions, which is for use of another thing, is say the Protector. So the terms within that gets attached to the national mortgage form. All parties have to then sign every single page. I know, yep, they might have signed execution pages and everything, but Ppsr will not register it and will not acknowledge it unless all parties have all signed all the pages of those documents effectively on one corner or the other. As I said, they're the forms of the terms. We have to do a CAF, which is a client authority form. So effectively that gives us authority to deal in the Ppsr desktop for you. Client signs that, each party has to sign that. So whether there's a company, then the sole director or both directors sign it, and then the individual signs it, or the other entity. National mortgage form, and believe it or not, yes, whilst we do now have a national mortgage form, they are different in every single state, which seems nonsensical, but it is. So there's a few nuances in relation to that. So when we have it in LightYear Docs 2.0, we'll obviously select the state and then it'll grab the right form and everything. But we complete that, provide it back to your client to sign and everything. If they don't have the title certificate, we do a title search. That's part of the disbursements. If there's a company or a trustee company involved, then we have to do a company extract, which we provide, and it has to be an up-to-date one. So that's all provided in the desktop solution that we have, or the cloud app solution that we have access to. If there's a first mortgagee in place, we have to contact them. So we write them a letter and say, hey, if the client's looking at taking out a second mortgage, they're invited into the Ppsr desktop to, in effect, accept that. And they'll often need deed of priority, which we'll discuss in a second. Then we have to get from obviously the accountant, even though a lot of this information might be in the documents, but the main things we need to do to verification of the ID is full names of each party, email addresses, mobile phone numbers. And I'll go through each of that. So this is the client authority form that I talked about. So the CAF that I always call. So client 1, client 2 signs. We tick which type of document it is, because we can do mortgages, caveats, releases. They effectively sign that. We sign that electronically, comes back to us. We then do what's called a VOI, so verification of ID. Clients get an email and also a text. So there's a it's similar to two-factor authentication. They effectively log in. They have to upload their ID. They then also take photos of themselves, and it has to be different. Obviously, mobiles, different email addresses for each party. That then we don't actually see that. That comes back through to the Ppsr settlements team. Ppsr settlements teams confirms that identification process and says, okay, we're right to go. So we've effectively got what I would call a handshake in relation to mortgage. So mortgagee, mortgagor, IDs confirmed. We're confirmed with parties effectively agree to it and acknowledge it, and we're right to go electronically. This is the national mortgage form that we have to sign by each party. As I said before, it's quite a simple form other than the fact it's different in each state, but it's called the national mortgage form. Our lodgement details get on there. Obviously, the mortgagee get to then, and then down the bottom, there's a section that refers to, on the next page, the terms and conditions. So we'll put in this additional terms and conditions, refer to appendix on pages 3 to 8, which might be the projected document, and all signed by all parties that now form part of this form and the terms and conditions of the mortgage. If there's not terms and conditions custom terms and conditions such as the protector, then there are standard terms and conditions which can be adopted in each state, and that we can attach to those as well. We just got to make sure that they're all applicable to the particular mortgage we're registering. So, as I said before, first mortgage in play, we write to the mortgagee, invite them into the Ppsr desktop. The first mortgagee provides permission. They will provide permission. I haven't seen in really any cases that they haven't. They'll generally want a deed of priority, which I mean, Rod can probably talk a bit more about this, but effectively regulates the priority amount or amount secured and payable under each loan. So with the amount secured and payable under the first, and the amount secured and payable under the second. And you know, this provides some protection to the second mortgagee as well, because a lot of first mortgagees try to have in effect all monies, don't they, Rod?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I mean, just clarifies that the equity amount sort of is limited, so you're providing greater security on the second mortgage. 100%, yep. Michael.
So just some of the other services that we can do in relation to Ppsr and our settlements dashboard. So we can do mortgages, as we said, discharge, lodge caveats, which we do a lot for clients. We draw those caveats. We do all our PPSR within there. We can do, which I've
just on that one, Michael, it's important because a number of LightYear members have been in touch with us about terms and conditions, and we've been helping them put some charging clauses into their documentation so that if their clients or indeed themselves don't get paid, you put a charge on. And I've said it before, that you can go home and tell your wife you owe some money, or your partner you owe some money, and nothing happens, but you go home and tell your partner that there's a caveat put on your home. It's amazing how quickly that bill gets paid. So the caveats are a particularly strong tool to ensure payment.
Yeah, so LRBAs was just starting to roll out a couple of those. I had a few in the last couple of weeks in related parties and a few others. That we have settlement facilities if there has to be a normal conveyancing process in relation, there actually are funds transferred. So we have agents throughout the country through our dashboard that can actually attend settlement if they have to attend, and also arrange in relation to trust accounts and the transfer of funds. We also have, I've mentioned there, I was talking about to Rod, and I've mentioned to Grant and Tony, we also have the ability within the team where we've got to have document storage for original wills, original documents and everything. That's stored within the partner that we deal with in a separate service. So how, as I said before, so we talked about the what, now the how. So it's via Ppsr desktop online. Each state requirements are different. Just email us at that registrations at Eventum Optimum, or as I call it, eo.com.au. That's Latin for the best result, if anyone wanted to know. And we go from there. So this pricing exclusive to LYD members, mortgage registration is $440 plus disbursements. They sort of sit around the I said 275 to 400. It's probably more around that 275 to 325. Depends in relation to whether we need to get company extracts, title searches, etc. But if you work on that 440 to 350 is probably right. Well, as we, the process is improving, and I can see as we, get scale, more and more scale, we'll probably be able to put some more price pressure in relation to that. But that is very sharp in relation to, if you check out, you go down to your local lawyer or anyone else to do that process. Ppsr registration, this is a really tight price for LightYear Docs members, but for Ppsr only $110. For Ppsr and revolving loan and security deed, $275. And it's really important that when you're doing a Ppsr and it relates to a director shareholder loan or a UPE or anything, that you have that appropriate loan and security deed in place. We will have that up on, which I've mentioned to a few people, on LightYear Docs 2.0, when you'll be able to complete that. But yeah, it's important to have that deed that meets the Ppsr regulations and legislation. We also have through that solution in relation to, it's quite an amazing system in terms of what we've got in terms of mortgages and Ppsr, but we can actually do property assessments, and there's valuation fees there in relation to that. It all depends on the property value, but they're in effect like a desktop valuation. We can also, we've also got a panel of valuers in our team that do businesses, plant and equipment and other assets. And we're doing a couple at the moment for a few LightYear Docs members out of Victoria, aren't we, Rod? In that space, in relation to, and some of those are in terms of unit holder issues, so disputes, divorces and other.
It's quite amazing where the source of work comes from and how you need it, isn't it? It is. business valuations, asset valuations. It's just important. It's so important to get the valuation process right, so that it doesn't get it doesn't get sort of clawed back later on. So it's one of those things you always try and cut corners, but it always comes back to bite you if you don't do it right, Michael.
Yeah, it's very important. And we've got stamping solutions with that whole product that we deliver. So that whole one desktop, so we can actually arrange online, although some states require us to send the originals in, but we can arrange it. They'll take the electronic at first, and often we'll have to show them the original, but majority of states are now accepting electronic and online. So we can do trust and SMSF deeds. We do state revenue and land tax clearance services and other stamping. So that's a fantastic service as well. So I've got a table there, which I've provided before, but that basically just goes through each states and the requirements in relation to stamping of trust deeds. You can always get them stamped outside of that, but that shows you the ones that actually require whether it's a DT or UT or an SMSF. So this is a checklist we launched a little while ago. I thought we'd just sort of work through it a little bit, but we've been actually working with a lot of LightYear Docs members, and they're really enjoying this. And I actually think it's a great thing to roll out when you're doing your end of financial year reviews, or any of your client reviews, in fact, even if you're doing quarterly file reviews. But we've put this together, and it basically goes through, I guess it's from the EO perspective, isn't it, Rod, the client risk areas and checklists that you sort of should be looking out for. And it deals with things where, oh, maybe we should put a PPSR in here. Maybe we've got an issue starting to appear here. And it's just a matter of reaching out. If you want to deal with us, reach out with us. We're always available on phone, and just discussing the matter. We can do a free discovery session each time, and then we can start strategizing, and then we work with you and your client and work out how it best suits you. So some accountants like us to invoice them, and then they deal with the client, and others want us to go direct. So effectively, if you want to just run through this checklist we've got, Rod, so it goes through, I think there's 4 or 5 main headings, but as you can see, company, we've got there for your purposes, clients, reference, financial year, and it's got company entity debt, potential personal liability, and it goes through each of those. Have DPNs been issued? Is there late lodgement or non-lodgement of SGC returns? Div 7A loans, and what's been done? Register of personal guarantees. We always reckon it's good to do this, because how many people do we find, we come across, even the accountant refers to us, no one actually knows, oh, I think I've put a personal guarantee on that creditor application. I thought I got it on that finance. I'm not sure.
No, I've not signed any personal guarantees. Then you go and then you start reviewing the supplier agreements, the lease agreements, franchise agreements, and of course there's personal guarantees. And quite often those personal guarantees aren't just by the director, but by their associates. It's just, I guess it's just a matter of knowing where the liability lies. Like a number of counterparties won't deal without personal guarantees, so we understand that to do business, quite often it is a requirement, Michael, but if you're aware of it, and look, I guess if you are getting to the stage where the business is suffering quite potentially insolvently, you need to look at where the exposure, not only for the company applies, but the individuals behind the company. And that's important, because a lot of those things there, we talk about personal liability, DPNs and guarantees and Div 7A loans in the event of insolvency. The company veil of protection is lost. So you need to be aware that where a company's debts creep out of the company and come and start grabbing personal assets, houses and other assets. So to be aware is to be forewarned, is to be forearmed. And look, how many times, Michael, we get told, no, we have not signed any personal guarantees, and they're all over the place. People just don't realise they're not just signing as a director, but they're signing as a guarantor as well.
And the amount of documents people sign, haven't read them and stuff, and don't really understand.
It's scary. It's scary.
We had someone was asking us to do a bit of due diligence on a quite a large asset purchase in Queensland at the moment, a golf course, in fact, and the guy had signed a number of documents, hadn't he? And we, one of our first phone, we read through it. Took Rod read through, I should say, and took me a couple of hours to do it. Obviously, no charge, because we weren't engaged yet. And we said, do you realise that you're personally liable for this once you've paid the deposit and for this multi-million-dollar contract? And he goes, no, that's not right, it's supposed to be and you go, well, it is. And we showed him, and he goes, oh, he should have heard penny drop.
And he'd been negotiating for months on this acquisition, and the personal guarantee was a pivotal part of the whole negotiation, and hadn't been addressed for months. He wasn't aware he'd signed it, and was flabbergasted when we told him. He's gone, oh, So it's just amazing how people can sort of, I know mistakes happen. It's amazing how you could, when we're talking, such large multi-million-dollar deals, Michael, that people aren't aware.
Yeah, it is. So I'll just flick onto the rest of the checklist. So anti-structure issues, obviously, and we're all sort of aware of these, but it's worth going through and making sure of, trust with individual trustees. We know we get to positions where clients will put them in place because of dollars and other reasons, or you might have picked up a client from another accountant, but these are sort of key areas you've got to look at where there's risk exposure. Entities with both spouses acting. We had one just 2 weeks ago and we're flabbergasted, but someone had a large portfolio of assets in both him and his wife's name, and both him and his wife were on the company, and obviously significant risk sitting there. Inter-entity related party loans, trading entity holding assets, such as IP and everything. Security via Ppsr.
There's one thing I haven't discussed before, Michael, just on that previous slide. Even though we obviously want to separate husband and wife and partners away from being both directors and holding joint assets, and separate the risk from the asset holding. There is one thing called the Doctrine of Exoneration, which I haven't talked about before. Essentially, if one party is borrowing money from the company purely for their own benefit, so in other words, if they take a $50,000 loan out and it's purely for their own benefit, or they're the sole director, that can go against the personal assets. So there is a couple of little ways we can. There's always, when we get these strategies, don't sort of assume that your client's going to be held personally liable. We have a couple of tricks up our sleeve, and things like the Doctrine of Exoneration, they hold up in court. The insolvency practitioners we use accept them, and what it means is that we can quite often hold personal assets even though you think it's all lost. So don't just, even if it is set up wrong at the start for cost reasons or whatever it might be, don't just assume it's all wrong, because quite often there are other ways to get around it. Not always, but let us have a look at it.
It's not necessarily panic stations, is it?
No.
So we've got potential insolvent trading. Obviously, as we talked about at the start of the thing, there's a few of those coming through, zombie companies and stuff, but that sort of goes through, is there opportunity to put safe harbor, which we've got a large number of clients who are on safe harbor agreements now, don't we, Rod? That we roll out.
That's probably one of the biggest influxes of work of recent times, Michael. A number of people, as they've come out of COVID, and all of a sudden, they weren't exposed to personal liability. It's been a bit of a shock to the system when they understand, well, now the company's got to stand on its own 2 feet. And if it's trading insolvent, we're personally liable, particularly clients with significant personal assets. We have a safe harbor template, which we put in place, and we monitor it on a monthly basis. And it costs like, hundreds of dollars to do, not thousands, to have this monitored on a monthly basis. And it's a civil defense against insolvent trading. So for what it achieves, it's a really cheap, it's like the Ppsr. The Ppsr is cheap for the benefit it provides to the client. It's almost a no-brainer to put in place. So any clients you have who you think might be verging on that insolvent trading, particularly if they've got assets. I mean, if a client's got no assets, you make a risk analysis. To run a successful insolvent trading claim costs tens of thousands of dollars. So if your client's got insignificant assets, then it's not worth it. But if a client's got millions of dollars of assets, or large hundreds of thousands, a safe harbor is a cheap way to protect them.
Yeah, and it's great. It's actually great to see that there's been a couple of LightYear Docs members. We've got one who spent about probably close to $5,000 with us in relation to PPSRs. Has actually been very proactive. Has gone through his book and looked at all these sort of risk areas, and we just we're just taking him off little bite-sized pieces, but he's providing significant value into his client book and protection in relation to that side of things. So obviously other things, priority payments, ATO, those predator type of situations, checking out those ratios, which we're all aware of.
So Michael, just on that as well, one of the things we've been doing where accountants set up new client companies, at the time, obviously the company doesn't, it doesn't actually, it doesn't exist. So you're putting money into the company. So straight away you put in place a PPSR security and loan agreement. And we make them as a revolving facility, so they're one-off facility. So you do that from the get-go as part of your company setup process. Then your client, any money that they put into the company or lend to the company is protected. So for the relatively cheap cost it is, I think it's a really smart way of starting with the client from the get-go really well.
Yeah, and it's quite. I talked about it at the Master Strategy Day, but I know certainly when I do company setups now, I actually think it's quite a valuable package that I roll out. So I've got not only the company via LightYear Docs, whether it's a standard company, I'm a leading member, but let's say it's a standard company for operating purposes. I put in a successor director as part of the package. I also put a loan and security deed with Ppsr, because obviously the company hasn't been established yet, and so someone has to pay for that. So that director or shareholder pays for that initial setup costs. Immediately there's a loan owing back to them. So we've got a position where we can put in that loan and security deed, Ppsr. We've got our deeds allow for revolving. So if there's additional funds lent to the entity, covers that off. But all of a sudden, you provided a value proposition to your clients in relation to that setup and structure. Because I know a lot of people go online now and say, hey, I can register a company. Yep, they go and do it and they do stuff it up. We all know that. And then they come to you and it costs them more money. But you know, that value package is a lot more to the client now. So it really increases what you can actually, I believe, charge for that as well, because it's something that not many others are doing out there. So obviously, once this checklist, we'll send it out again. We've sent it to a few people, but we'll make it available anyhow. But tick off those action plans, and if there's anything to tick, reach out. We're happy to have a chat. No obligation, and work through any of the issues, and then we can see if there's something there in relation to particular clients. We actually had a accounting group ask us recently at our checklist, didn't they, Rod, that they said, would we mind come up and spend a week up there and go through all their files on their behalf? But
it's quite interesting, because I think the more we get to work with LightYear members and see the service we can offer, that they can see the value add to their clients. And I think probably the most important thing is the relative cost of value add. It's a lot of the solutions we're proposing are relatively cheap, Michael.
Yep.
The bang for the buck is quite huge.
It's that value proposition again, you know, sort of don't get caught up in what the cost, but they are cheap. You're right. But
you don't get in trouble for giving your client protective advice, that's for sure. But look, and the other thing is because we are polite year members, we've got our price fairly sharp. You know, if you do want to, the client comes first, of course. But there is room to add some on, because even with a bit of an add-on for the accountant, you're still below the market prices. So
a lot of those Ppsr companies are charging $550 to $1,000 for that particular service, aren't they?
So I see someone just here said that for a mortgage it's $1,000 plus. Working in a law firm for 7 years, lawyers would definitely charge about $1,000 plus disbursements. So we're 40% of the cost of the law firm. That
Before we jump into the case study, we just got a few Q&A. Let's see if we can answer those. Sean Costello, great supporter down at towards New South Wales border, golfer like Rod and myself as well. With a second mortgage under a protector, what is the process if the individual wants to access some equity in the mortgage property to invest? Very, very good question. There has to be, if they do want to, and if it's in the short term, Sean, then I wouldn't suggest putting the second in. We would have to unwind that second mortgage for them to be able to access that equity, because obviously it's locked up by that. I actually spent a bit of time with Grant and Tony on this recently, and we've got a paper coming out in terms around that. So then obviously once there's equity again, correct, you'd have to protect again. You could certainly use the original protector document. It's just that we'd have to put in a few more documents in relation to when we take up that second and transfer the equity. So you'd have to. That's where a lot of our valuations come in. So we do valuations and look at what equity is available and calculate that. So then you have it effectively on your working paper file in relation to that transfer of that equity. Did you want to add anything to that, Rod?
No, that's exactly right.
Joe's just said, have you seen that? What's the reaction from any lender when this Ppsr is in place? Do they request a release each time they apply for finance that gives them priority over the Ppsr? Have you come across that? Or
yeah, definitely come across that. Look, there's two ways of dealing with it. You can either remove the Ppsr and put it back on again. The problem with that is, and somebody else has asked a question there about the time frame for lodging a Ppsr. If you take the Ppsr off and then re-put it on, effectively, if you don't, it means you're outside the time frame, and then you have to wait six months before the Ppsr becomes effective. So the other way of doing it, and the preferred way, and in my experiences, all lenders have accepted this. It's called subordination. What that means is you allow the lender, like the finance lender, what it might be, to take priority over yourself. So they go in front of you on the priority for the PPSR. And
but it's important that you carve out that position though, aren't you, with a deed of priority or something, so that they might go in front of you, but it might be for X amount in relation to the equity.
That's right. You put the amount. You definitely put the amount in there before you allow that to go through. But saying that it's the way the priority works. It is as simple as that. Whoever's in first, second, third, like a mortgage, same with the PPSR. First in gets first priority. So it's important that you get it right when you do allow subordination. But we had one the other day where a client, for cash flow purposes, took out a debtor finance facility. They protected their own personal contributions into the business. They needed the funds, so they were prepared to put the financier in front of themselves, bearing in mind what the exposure was.
Okay, let's jump into the case study, and I'll give you a little small update on some LightYear Docs things, and also some of the webinars to come. So this is a great one in relation to a person who had Simon, who had a bit of cash flow problems during COVID. Luckily, we'd been working with his accountant, and we put some proactive steps in before that. But if you I'll hand this over to you, Rod, to sort of run through. But
yeah, probably a good example though, where again we talked about before about the emotional versus the financial matters, and this is an example of where the emotional matters were overriding the financial decision-making process. So being able to sort of have a steady hand in a time of crisis was important for this client. Look, the question, I guess, is do we restructure or turn around? Look, we always do an analysis. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't like giving bad news to clients, but sometimes a business is not profitable, and the business should be liquidated, and the client should potentially not be running a business. There should be a PAYG, and telling a client that is often quite difficult. So the question around restructure, turnaround, or exit is a really important question. And look, we liaise direct with the accountant on the financials and the decision-making process. But I find too many people in this sort of component of the industry want to restructure everything and keep it going because there's funds in it, and it's often not the right decision. Sometimes
they just want to get their claws into funds, don't they? Which is
they do, and sometimes it's not the right decision for the client. So you've got to sit back and make sure you be honest with your client and say, is this business, is it solvent? Is it really a profitable business? So that's we do a lot of analysis around that, Michael. And once we've sort of worked that out, so in the second part of that question, there was some people just don't want to, they give up the fight, and that's quite when people are down. It happens in family matters, family law matters. Also happens in business matters. Quite often people capitulate, and it's a real shame because they've got the law protects them to a large extent, but if they're not willing to fight, and we had one about 6 weeks ago, Michael, where a client, we could have saved his home, and no matter what we did, we tried to resuscitate the bloke. He had just capitulated.
Once they make their mind up.
Yep, and look, I'm sitting there. I was more concerned about the bloke's house than he was, and in the end, no matter what we said or did, the guy just goes, it's too hard, and you end up losing his home, which is terrible, but he just wouldn't fight for it. And look, you can't win them all, unfortunately. We tried very, very hard to help this individual, but emotionally he was broken, and it was the only thing he could do. He was prepared to lose his home because it was too hard. So the thing there, it's easy just to walk away. It really is easy to walk away. But if ever your client needs to stand and fight, it's when things are bad. Because right now, I mean, this is their future. If they have to start all over from zero, or they've got some assets behind them, it makes a big difference. We all know how hard it is to get that on that first step in life. So it's very important.
It's interesting, the whole psychology behind it, isn't it? I mean, we've been working with a large digital agency recently in terms of search engine optimization and things like that. And when people do Google searches and stuff, but people tend to do searches on debt and debt distress and everything around. The numbers show between 9 o'clock and midnight. So they're laying in bed. You've been thinking about. They've had dinner, maybe a couple of beers or a wine. Their partner's gone to sleep, and they're laying in bed, and they're bottling all this up, and it becomes quite an emotional state for them. It's an interesting area of work, and just going through that whole psychology process.
Probably the other thing is too, as accountants, or for the accountants out there, you have a special fiduciary relationship with your clients. But even so, we find that clients in this situation, they've been lying to their creditors, they've been lying to their financiers, they've been lying to their other half for so long, trying to keep the business alive. And it's very often very hard to get them to be truthful. And when we explain to them that we can't fix their problems if they're not truthful, it's when they finally realise that we're 100% non-conflicted and we act in their best interests. It's like a relief off their shoulders, Michael, and everyone. They go, wow, we've actually got somebody here who's not acting for the creditors, not chasing me, but actually trying to protect my business and my personal assets. So it's like they can breathe out again. It's hard to get to that stage, because quite often clients are very cagey and very cautious in telling us the facts, simply because they have been used to telling lies to creditors for so long.
And seriously, we've got a point up there, this particular one too, that, which is often the case, is there's often personal credit issues arise when clients' businesses obviously take credit cards out. They get personal credit of all different manners and all different levels, all different sort of funders, some worse than others. But we've recently partnered, Eventum Optimum has partnered with a group that I did a partner solution one live from their office in McMahon's Point in Sydney recently, and and they specialise in that area. And we spent a bit of time did due diligence on each other, didn't we, Rod? And we and it's quite a good fit or marriage. They specialise in that area. We used to negotiate and get good results in that personal credit space, but they've got programs that run through the National Credit Code and Credit Act, and they put all the contracts in. They know the right process to go through and requesting those from the lender and not using the documents that people have got. And they said in 90% plus of cases, they actually get an extremely positive result, which range from removing marks off credit files to actually getting interest and even the principal reduced or written off. And they're equally on the other side. They've had a number of clients, and they continue to, and they're sending a good number of leads to us in relation to that. They have been contacted on their personal issues, and they have businesses attached to them. And so we're working very closely with them, and so we sort of work off each other at the moment, and it's actually working quite well. So if you do, even if you have a client with those personal credit issues, whilst we would have dealt with it in the past, you reach out to us and we refer you on in terms of that arrangement and stuff. So this was, as Rod said, restructure, turnaround, just exit, or just walk up and fight. So we'll move on to the next one. So
can I just make a point on that, Michael, because it really brings me to one of my biggest frustrations. So quite often a client won't accept the financial position of the business that they're in, and what they'll do is they'll sell personal property, they'll take out credit cards or personal loans to put additional money into the business. The other telltale signers are using like some of those cash flow financiers, the Get Capitals and the funders and the Prospers of the world. I mean, they're good if it's a short-term turnaround for a particular reason, but any sustainability, the interest rates they charge are not sustainable. At that point in time, that's when we should be talking, not after they've lost their homes, not after they've gone and taken out additional personal credit, because quite often by the time we've got there, a lot more damage has been done. So when those early warning signs, that's why that accountant's checklist is so important. When those warning signs are there, when they're starting to fall behind in payments, or they're getting a few letters of demand, that's when we should be. The earlier we get in, and we can prevent them selling houses, and we can maybe value and move houses around to other parties, or we can do some structural issues to protect those assets. It's frustrating when they, rather than dealing with the issue and facing it head on, they'll just borrow more money and put more money in to what is essentially a business that can't make money. It's a big money pit. It just keeps drawing and drawing. So it's I know it's eventually it's a client's decision, but when you can meet with those warning signs, have a chat to your clients and just give us a quick call. We're happy just to have a even a short conversation about some of the options that might be available for your clients.
In this case goes through, and effectively we had to take. We're talking about the person. We had to take his personal exposure into as part of the action, and so it was decided to sell his business. So we've assisted Simon in relation to selling that. Often there's valuations, offer docs or IMs, and whether or not we deal with business brokers as well. So there's different methods in doing that. So luckily, in this case, Simon's accountant was very proactive. This is someone who's been referring to us for quite some time and referred us. And when he was starting the business, and we actually put a loan and security deed in with a Ppsr on funds that he'd raised. And so there was actually a debt owing to Simon in this position. So there are the only other security positions in place were over some assets, so like vehicles and plant and equipment and things like that.
And this, unfortunately, this is more the exception rather than the rule. Normally, you know, those monies submitted to companies in the form of loans aren't documented or secured. So it's fantastic when they are. Again, time-wise, if we can get in early, we can make sure they are put in place well and truly before anything gets too far. Bearing in mind, someone asked a question before 20 days, so we might need to do some fancy footwork to refresh those loans to make them a binding security interest at that point in time. In this case, unfortunately, the negative side though, Michael, was that there was still superannuation payable. No SGC statements lodged, which meant the ATO issued a lockdown director's penalty notice. Now, that meant that despite the fact the company was put in liquidation, the personal liability attaching to those superannuation payments became a personal issue. There's three ways to remit.
And what's a lockdown DPN, right?
Well, a lockdown DPN essentially is it's on lodgement. So you got to lodge your BAS statements on time or your SGC statements on time.
Yep.
With the BAS, you got worst case scenario for a DPN. You got 3 months after or before the date of insolvency to lodge those DPNs. So you got 3 months at the absolute outside, but ideally lock them on time. So if your clients lodge and we liquidate the company, there's 3 ways to remit that director's penalty notice. 1 is you liquidate the company. 2, you enter into some voluntary administration, or 3, into an acceptable payment plan with the ATO, whoever that party might be. However, if you haven't lodged, it's a lockdown, which means you can't get out of it. It's personal liability, and you've got that is a personal. It's nothing you can do about it. So that lodgement, and I know we sound like bloody crack records, and it sounds terrible, but the one thing we keep saying, if you make sure, no matter how dire your client's business situation might be, just continue to lodge in those SGC statements, lodge, submit these DPNs, no matter how bad they can be. And we've had clients who've got, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 worth of ATO debt, but because they've lodged, they can end up, potentially liquidating that company and walk away. We've had clients who've got smaller debts, but they just put their head in the sand, haven't lodged. I know as accountants, it's frustrating because you can only lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. But I guess you just keep on encouraging that horse to go towards that pool of water.
100%. So results?
Yep. So in this case, it was a reasonably good result. We negotiated on Simon's behalf some what's called composition offers and some vehicle bundles. So for the personal debts, we set they settle less than 100 cents on the dollar. The vehicles had some equity in them, so we actually have transferred those vehicles across to other related companies. So the person, someone wanted to keep those vehicles. Because he still had the security interests, he was able to assert his rights on that, and he actually received first priority of the payment. You remember we talked about the liquidator always gets paid first, then secured creditors, then unsecured creditors. But because he'd had sought good advice in the outset, Simon got paid before the ATO and other unsecured creditors, which is a great situation. With the DPN, as we know with the ATO, they don't accept less than 100 cents on the dollar for the principal, but we were able to waive some penalty and some interest charges and enter into a payment plan with the ATO on behalf of Simon so that he could meet those payments and avoid any personal insolvency. So look, it's some creditors you can get a lot better negotiation. The ATO is certainly not one of them. So that's why that lodgement's so important. But here, as long as Simon never wanted to go into personal insolvency, and because he'd taken good advice at the outset, he was able to escape almost all of his the company's protection was able to escape most of his things for him, Michael. Just this director's penalty notice, and look, it's something which we're seeing it now through statements of claim for trade creditors that the ATO is they're coming hard. So this one here, this DPN and lodgements, and you're about to get inundated, guys. Put your hand up and let's let's try and jump in front of the train and help your clients out.
So just a reminder there, so shoot those registrations, any questions or anything through to that, there is an info, and we've got our email addresses coming up. But I just wanted to give everyone a quick update of what's coming up in relation to these fortnights, and a bit of a LightYear Docs quick update as well, which we delivered to our shareholders last week at shareholders AGM. But over the coming fortnights, I'm going to be bringing a lot more in relation to technology. I've been speaking to a few different partners. I do a fair bit of work before I actually invite anyone in, obviously, to these solutions and everything. So we'll run some with multi-stacks, and then just some particular apps. We'll be rolling out some HR documents on the LYD platform in conjunction with ILA. ILA's got on board now as effectively an advisory chair, an ex-HR lawyer, an expert in the space. And so we'll be doing a bit of work with us, and ILA will be doing some co-branded documents on the LightYear Docs platform in that particular space. We'll also be bringing forward some of the HR applications that we've been dealing with. I've been doing a lot of work with Happy HR, and I know that Change GPS has done some with them. So we might get Tim involved in that as well, or someone from the Change GPS team. We'll be digging more into that succession planning, and a lot more into the ESOP stuff as well, rolling out a number of those at the moment, and also looking at forgetting about ESOPs, but also how do you position your practice and to sell your practice. So we've been working closely with a couple of brokers who are going to come on, and we'll bring some funders on in relation to that as well that we've been working with, and we'll run some of that. So. And we'll also, one that I know Grant wants to be involved in, and I'm looking forward to, we're going to run a few sessions with our members and get you on here, do a roundtable on why, how, what in your businesses, and talk about how you utilize, I guess, some of the solutions and stuff. And so we can sort of chat about all of that. So I'll be looking forward to inviting a few of those. But in terms of LightYear Docs 2.0, Ash and myself have been working, it's been more so Ash, very heavily in relation to this. We've got some great new branding coming out. The shareholders got to see it, really love it. It's really, up to date, takes us to the next level. We've got a private customer or member portal, which will become a community. We've got a new document platform. We've got new look documents. We've got people working in the background on that. New strategies coming out. LYD 2.0 is going to be completely amazing. We're starting to really see some really good market penetration. Between now and 30 June, we've got our sales team fairly focused in relation to that. And there's some really good opportunities in there. At the AGM, which I just mentioned to everyone here, we actually are doing what I will call, I'm obviously work as a CFO and like a consultant CFO to the group, as well as my directorship, but we'll be doing, I've done their other two capital raising, but we're doing capital raise, just nothing to do with working capital, purely in relation to bringing the greatest in terms of LYD 2.0, in terms of those APIs and integrations to partners like BGL, EO, Change GPS, and the like. So, and really increasing that area, and also bringing a greater product to market. So LightYear is cash flow positive. It'll be pretty close to being profit positive, net profit after tax positive at 30 June 2021, which is a fantastic result, as I said to the shareholders, after in effect 18 months of operations. For a startup, especially in the tech space, to get to that position is remarkable. But so I released that to the shareholders. I do have a strategic partner who's looking at, who's interested. I guess in it's almost an underwrite. We'll take up the whole lot, but we're giving existing shareholders, and I'm happy to take expressions of interest. We're looking at about 500K, but I'm pretty. I've probably got EOOs of 400, and that strategic partner sitting in the background as well. But we welcome more people to be involved in our community. So whether or not there's an allocation, but just reach out to me at michael@lightyeardocs.com.au and make sure you get applications and that information about that offer doc, which contains a lot more about LightYear Docs 2.0 and where we're headed, and also about our market penetration and our sales process. So I'm happy to answer any questions or calls on that as well. So up there, we've got the Eventum Optimum contact details, emails and everything. These slides that we sent out, obviously copy this afterwards. Fantastic. Thanks for your time today, Rod. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone took a lot out of that. And I look forward to speaking to you going forward. Thanks, Rod. Thanks, everyone.